All right, kids. So today is day 2 of completing the square. So the front page is a warm-up. The entire thing is a warm-up. This is what I want you to do. You should be able to get this done in about 10, 15 minutes, somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. What I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video, do these problems, solve by factoring, and then the bottom one solve by taking the square root. Then start the video, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll through so you can see the answers. Pause the video so you can see each part and make sure that your answers are correct. If not, make the corrections seeing what I'm doing and then correct them on your own paper. All right, pause it and then start it back up when you're done. All right, so here we go. Let's check out those answers. What do you say? So here are your answers for the top 3, the middle 3, and then the bottom 3. All right. Now, I made note up here by this top one up here. If you look at this one, it says solve by factoring. This one, I would not have solved by factoring. I would have actually solved this one by taking square roots. But I wanted you to practice writing it out like this, or seeing that this, oh, is a binomial. I got to factor it. It's got to be 2 identical binomials, but with just opposite signs. Notice the signs are opposite here, giving you 2 opposite values. So this, if I were to do this on the test and I said solve any way you want, this one I would not have factored. I would have solved by taking square roots. But that's when we come back on Monday, where we're going to talk about what's the best method. So flip it over, and this is solve by completing the square. All of these I want you to complete the square. Now you're going to be like, oh, some of them I can factor. I could do that. I want you to practice completing the square. Understand this. I want you to practice it just in case you start getting good and you can identify a pattern. Understand today, with day 2 of solving by completing the square, the only time we are ever going to do this is when the b value, come on, buddy, is even. All right? You can really only complete the square if your b value is even. And you're going to see this. If you're like, I don't believe it. Look back on all the problems yesterday. All your b values are even. All right? Completing the square only works if your b values are even. If your b is not even, you're going to want to solve using a different method. But today, I set them up so all of them are even, so we can practice solving by taking this, by completing the square. So, like I said on the front side, if you feel really good with this, pause, do the problems yourself, and then check the answers by playing through the video. If you were not here yesterday, maybe you were taking the test or you're doing something else, listen to the entire video. Watch, listen to me do this stuff, and make sure you're taking notes on this also. And also get the notes copied from another person in the class, a strong student, somebody who's doing well and somebody who took really nice notes, so that you can look over them this weekend. So here we go. This first one, x squared plus 14x plus 13 equals 0. So the first thing when solving by completing the square is we need to have our own special c value. So we're going to subtract 13. All right. So we're going to get x squared plus 14x plus blank equals negative 13 plus blank. Because remember, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. Now, just a refresher, I'm only going to do this once. To get your special c value, to get to your new special c value to complete the square, it's b divided by 2 squared. All right, it's half of b, and then you square it. So here, half of your b is 7. 7 squared is 49, and that's what you're going to add on both sides, 49 and 49. Now, the one nice thing is now that it is a perfect square trinomial, this is going to factor to 2 identical binomials that we write as a binomial squared. And to get this binomial, you take your b and divide it by 2, and that's what your constant is. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. So that's what it is. It's x plus 7 squared equals, and now you simplify this. Negative 13 plus 49 is 36. So now you're just going to solve it. So I'm going to take the square root, take the square root. So the square and the square root cancel out, leaving me with x plus 7 equals plus or minus 6. If you haven't remembered plus or minus yet, we really need to make sure that anytime you take the square root, which is every problem, you put plus or minus. So now, to get our 2 solutions, we're going to have to subtract 7, and you're going to get x equals. So you got 6 minus 7 and negative 6 minus 7. So you're going to get negative 1 and negative 13 as your solutions. Now this one's easy because your a value is 1. When your a value is not 1, that's when they start getting a little more fun. All right, next one over. X squared minus 20x equals 3. So now look, the c value has been moved over for us. So that's awesome. So I'm just going to rewrite it as x squared minus 20x plus blank equals 3 plus blank. Now, I always write it like this, all right? Don't be like, oh, I don't need to write. No, no, no. Write it like that so you know that you got to get that special c value there. So again, to get that special c value, you go b divided by 2. So that's negative 10. Squared is 100. Now, yesterday I also said this. Your c value will always be positive because any number squared is always positive. So if you actually did show your work, negative 20 over 2, and you square it, all right, this should be a positive number. This should be positive 100. So anyway, I'm going to add 100 on this side, and our trinomial squared is going to be x minus 10 because you go b over 2, so negative 20 over 2. So your b value here, like the constant in your trinomial, can be negative, but your c, when you do this, will always be positive. Anyway, so it's x minus 10 squared equals 3 plus 100 is 103. So now, all right, we're going to go about solving this. So let's solve this sucker. Here we go. Ready? So we're going to take the square root, take the square root. So you're going to get x minus 10 equals. Now, 103 doesn't simplify, so we're going to get plus or minus square root 103. And that's okay. It's just going to be in our answer. So now I'm going to add 10, and I always write my answer with my constant, so 10, and then I go plus or minus whatever my unsimplified square root is. Bam. So 10 plus or minus 100 root 3. So there we go. 2 down. 3 to go. So again, like I said, if you're like crushing this, pause, do your problem, then just check your answer, fast forward through the video. So now, if we take a look at number 3, I guess, on this. All right, first step is always get rid of your c. I know some of you are like, oh, your a is not 1, so you're going to have to factor out a GCF. Wait, get rid of your c first. That's what you have to do first. So we're going to add 7. So you get 2x squared minus 12x plus blank equals 7 plus blank. Now, you realize that your a is not 2, so we got to factor that out. So we're going to get 7 plus blank. So when we factor out a 2, you're going to be left with x squared minus 6x plus blank. This is what we are working with. All right, this 2 is important because it's going to come down into your binomial squared. All right, it's going to come down here. But this, the highlighted thing, that's what we're going to try to make into a perfect square trinomial. So we say, all right, to get our special c, we go b divided by 2. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And then we square it. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. Now, 9 does not go here. It's not 9. It's not 9. Get rid of that. All right? Remember, when you factored out that GCF of 2, you actually multiply that 2 by the 9, and you get 18. All right, so you got to make sure you do that. Whatever your special c value is, you got to multiply by that GCF that you factored out. So we're going to get 25 on the outside, and now our trinomial squared, or a binomial squared, is going to be x minus 3, because you go b divided by 2, and it's negative 3. So now, this, very similar to the last problems, is we're going to solve. But you're not going to take the square root yet, because now we have that 2. So you're going to actually have to divide by 2 first. Now check this out. All right, we're going to be left with x minus 3 squared. But this, 25 over 2, doesn't simplify out to really a nice number. It's going to turn out to 25 seconds, like that, or it's going to simplify to 12.5. Understand, 25 and 2 are both not perfect squares. 25 is. That would simplify when you take the square root, but 2 is not. So what I would do, honestly, I'm just going to leave it as 12.5. All right, because whatever you do, you're still just going to get a unfactorable or unsimplified radical. So I'm just going to leave it like this. It's going to be totally fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root, and you're going to get x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 12.5. 12.5 isn't going to simplify, kids. It's not, and I don't want you to put that in your calculator and give me some funky decimal. Leave it like this. All right. So now our last step, add 3, and I'm going to write my answer over here. It's going to be x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 12.5. That's it. And that's it, and that's a fun one. You know, usually I'm going to try to make this number something that will simplify, but if it doesn't, hey, if it doesn't, we got to be good students. We got to say we just leave the answer exactly how it is. All right, let's go on to the next one. So again, move your C value. We do not want the C value, so I'm going to add 120, add 120 to both sides. So I get 5x squared minus 50x plus blank equals 120. Ooh, stay there. 120 plus blank. Ooh, that was a nice save. All right, so anyway, all right, this C value is not 1, so we're going to factor out a 5. So we're going to get 120 plus blank, and then we go back to our trinomial and we factor it out. We get x squared minus 10x plus blank. So we need our special C value here. To get our special C value, you go b divided by 2, so negative 5 divided by 2, or negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. Now 25 doesn't go over here. Remember, you multiply that 25 by the GCF and you get 125. So that's awesome. Remember, all right, this is all we care about. This, the 5 comes down. So it's 5, all right? And we got to figure out our binomial squared. So because our b is negative 10, our binomial is going to be x minus 5, because you just divide by 2, b divided by 2. All right, now on the right side, 120 plus 125 is 245. All right, and now we continue to solve. So now that we have this, we're going to solve by taking the square root. So we're first going to divide by 5, because you can't take the square root yet. We're going to be left with x minus 5 squared equals 49, because 245 divided by 5 is 45. 49. Take the square root, and you get x minus 5, x minus 5 equals plus or minus 7. Add 5, and you're going to get two real numbers here. I'm going to put them over here. X equals, so positive 7 plus 5 is 12. Negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. All right. Now, if you are starting to get this, I would recommend you pause the video and see what I get for these last two. If you're still not getting it, well, continue listening and see if you can pick it up, and you can do that on the last one. So here we go, last two. So I'm first going to start off by subtracting our C value, minus 72, all right? So I'm going to be getting negative 3x squared minus 6x plus blank equals negative 72 plus blank. Now, all right, a value is not 1, so I'm going to factor out a negative 3, leaving me with x squared, and then negative 6x divided by negative 3 is positive 2 plus blank, 2x plus blank. Now, again, everything over on this other side, notice I just write that down. I'm not doing anything with that yet. So this is what we're caring about. We're going to try to turn this into a perfect square trinomial. So we ask ourselves, all right, what's our special C value? So it's b divided by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. Now, all right, now we're going to go negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. That is what's going to be over there. So, all right, our trinomial squared, all right, is going to be x plus 1, because you go b divided by 2 to get this number, because 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1, there you go. And then over here on the other side, you're going to get negative 75. All right, awesome. So now we're going to solve. So we first divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. You're going to be left with x plus 1 squared equals negative 75 divided by negative 3 is positive 25. Now, if it would have stayed negative, you should be saying to yourself, hey, I'm going to get an imaginary number. But it's positive, so you're not. So now we take the square root, these cancel out, leaving you at x plus 1 equals plus or minus 5. We're going to get two answers, so we're going to minus 1, and you're going to get x equals, so 5, positive 5 minus 1 is 4, negative 5 minus 1 is negative 6. Those are your two answers. Now, like I said on the last one, if you feel good and you want to try this one without any help, do it alone. If you're still struggling, pay attention. Let's do one more. So here we go. Minus 168 on both sides. We always get rid of our C value. Notice, I don't even say it anymore. Just get rid of the C. We don't even want it. So we go 2x squared plus 32x plus blank equals negative 168 plus blank. All right, a value is not 1, so let's factor that sucker out. And I just rewrite everything because that doesn't help us out. I'm going to factor it, so 2x squared, when I factor out a 2, I'm left with x squared. 32, when we factor out a 2, we're left with positive 16x, and then plus blank. All right? Again, that 2 has been factored out. All we care about is this trinomial and trying to turn it into a perfect square trinomial. So what I like to do is bring down this 2, parentheses, parentheses, x. All right, we'll figure out what our perfect square binomial is, or a binomial squared will be. Negative 168. Actually, you know what? I'm going to erase that because we can actually do some big boy, big girl math. We'll add that together in a second. All right, so let's go back up to that binomial. So to get our special c value, you go b divided by 2, which is 8. 8 squared is 64. But this number over here is not 64. It's going to be 2 times 64, which is 128. All right, so now we're going to add negative 168 plus 128 is 40, but it's negative 40. Sorry, negative 40. Now, negative 40 is going to be fun because your 2 is not negative. So watch what happens here. You should be saying something funky is going to happen in my final answer, and you have a good feeling there, because when we divide by 2, we're going to be left with, ooh, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. Some of you might be like, Mr. Quammen, you didn't fill this out. Yeah, what's our binomial squared? Well, you go b divided by 2, so it's 16 divided by 2, and that's plus 8. Sorry, that's what your binomial squared is. So we're going to be left with x plus 8 squared, and now we divided by 2 before, we should get negative 20. So we continue solving. I'm going to take the square root. I'm going to take the square root. And here comes the fun part. We haven't done one of these yet. X plus 8 equals. Now, 20 and negative 20 make this even better, because this technically can actually simplify. And I'm going to show you where. 20 and negative 20 can be broken down into 3 factorable radicals, or simplified radicals. It can be broken down into negative 1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. All right? And the reason I broke it up like this is we've done this in the past. We know how to simplify this and this. We can simplify both those. This one, we don't know how to simplify. So I'm going to show you this. Ready? We've broken down 20 into 3 separate radicals, because negative 1 times 4 times 5 is negative 20. But we're going to simplify this radical. The square root of negative 1 is I. The square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of 5 is square root of 5. So I, 2, and square root of 5 are all going to be multiplied together here. This times this times this will come out to be this. Ready? Plus or minus, because you took the square root, it's plus or minus, 2i root 5. You see that? Why won't that go away? Why is that thing over there? That's going to confuse some of you. Oops. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. So, you see that? 2i plus or minus 2i root 5. Now, that is the simplified version of negative 20, because negative square root of negative 1, square root of 4, and square root of 5. So now, our last step is we're going to subtract 8, subtract 8. Now, some of you are like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? Well, this is easy. Ready? This 8 and plus or minus 2i root 5 can't combine. So your answer is just going to be negative 8 plus or minus 2i root 5. And there you go. Now, if you got that before I did it, that is unbelievable. If you didn't, this is probably the hardest one. Will you see ones like this on your homework? Yeah. Will you see ones like this on the test? Yeah, but I probably wouldn't have solved by completing the square anyway. So we'll talk about that when I come back. So you see the answers? Go ask the sub for the homework. Answers are at the bottom. Make sure you're checking those, and come in on Monday if you have any questions. Have a great day.